G'day, Terry Gordon here from HNT Gordon Planes. I'm just going to show you today in a video a little bit about sharpening straight blades like this for smoothing planes, trying planes, etc. Also straight square blades in shoulder planes, and then we'll move on and have a look at sharpening some hollows and rounds using a couple of different methods. A very handy piece of gear is just a standard disc sander, very useful. So in this case I've got a very small chip in my blade, so rather than grind the chip out on a bench grinder, first thing I'm going to do is grind it out on here by making the end of the blade flat. This setup here is exactly square to the wheel, so if I turn this on I can just do a light touch and I'll get rid of that chip there. Just a little bit more. And the other thing, by doing this you make sure you get your blade square. That's nice and square now and no chips. I can then grind that out, and having a blunt edge I'm less likely to burn the blade as I'm grinding. This one here, I'm going to do the same thing but for a different reason. It's not quite square, so I'm actually going to square it up, touching. It's just taking a little bit more off that side. Now that's nice and square to be reground. We'll now move over to the bench grinder and start the grind. Now we're going to move on to our bench grinder. This is a diamond dresser. It's a segment out of a brick saw which has just been cut with a plasma cutter or something, and I'm just using the diamond here to dress my wheel, keep it nice and clean. This is just a standard white grinding wheel, probably about 120 grit, 60 grit. Doesn't really matter that much because for me all I'm doing is hollow grinding. It's not achieving the sharpening process as such. So I just loosely cleans it up. You can see the grey swarf that was stuck in the stone is getting taken off. And I'll have a look down this way to make sure it's nice and square to my tool rest. Once I've done that, I want to achieve a 30-degree bevel. Just about anything we grind is at 30 degrees. So I've made up this little board. It's the line there at 30 degrees, and you can put your blade in there, and if it matches up, it's close enough to the 30 degrees that we need. There are other alternatives. You can also use a tool like this. It's an angle checker. That works very well. Now to get the right angle on the grinder, I'll just slowly bring my blade up and touch. Now you can see there it's grinding down at the bottom, so I want that, when I bring it up, I want it to touch in the middle of the blade. So I'm just going to tap this out slightly. Went the wrong way, sorry. I'm going to tap it slightly down. That's about as technical as it gets. Went a little bit far. And you can see now it's grinding in the middle of the bevel, which is what I want, at 30 degrees. So now I just keep that blade moving. Making sure I'm going right to the edges. You can see I'm just about up to my bevel, but because I've flattened that off to take out a chip, I keep going until it's got a sharp, basically a sharp edge. gets too hot, it's still not too bad there. If you keep it moving and your wheel is clean, it doesn't get that hot. But have a little bit of water there just to cool it down. And if you're doing several blades, sit one blade in and work on the next one. Now this one, remember, we took a little bit off one side, so I've just got to do a little bit more grinding on one side than the other. This is carbon steel, so it's a little bit more prone to burning than this other blade, which is high-speed steel. Now I just look directly at the blade, and if it's sharp, you won't be able to, well, we know white line. If it's blunt, if it's still got a blunt edge there, you'll see a white line on the blade. Just got a little bit to go. I can't see a white line, and I can also just feel a little wire edge starting to fold over onto the back of the blade. So that's now ground. Do a quick check on squareness. All good there. Grab my other blade. You can see it needs a bit of work to even up the bevel, so we'll do that. One thing that is most neglected with sharpening is grinding your blades properly. That would actually be enough grinding, but if you want to make it look nice and neat, you need to even that bevel up, so we just keep grinding away. With shoulder plane blades, always check, is it square? A little bit high on the right hand side, so we'll just add a little bit more grinding there. Set carbon steel, keep it cool. If you have skew blades like these, when you get a new tool and it's all set up properly, get a angle measuring guide and work out what the angle is. On our dado planes it's 10 degrees. So that's the easiest way to grind them to the angle that you want. And then the grinding is just basically the same, except you hold the blade at a slight angle. Now, same with the larger ones, same thing. Check what the angle is and then write that down somewhere so you don't forget it, and then you can always regrind your blades at the correct angle for skew blades. We'll now move on to hollows and rounds. The hollow blade, you have to have grinding wheels shaped like this. However, to shape that wheel, it's not difficult. Once again, you get a diamond dresser of some description, and it can be shaped quite easily. So for blades 1/2 inch and bigger, I use this one. Then I have my small one for small blades. So if I was going to sharpen, grind this blade, they don't need grinding very often, but if you're going to grind it, this is... The grinding marks are low, so I need to bring the tool rest down. Just a bit more. Right, it's grinding in the middle now. A little bit more. And you basically grind up towards the edge. I never grind right to the edge unless I've got to, once again, take a chip out. If I had to take a chip out of this blade, I would do exactly what I did before on the disc sander. I'd get the correct shape and put it in straight into the wheel, then grind it out. This blade here will then go on and we'll show you how to shape that and refine the edge. The blade for the round and for the hollow, before you start grinding, always check in your plane that the shape of this blade matches the sole of your plane, because this is the time to correct it if it's not. Okay, if your hollow or round is badly out of shape, in the case of a hollow, I use a round diamond file to get in, following the shape of the sole. I then gently take a little bit off the blade in the high spots. That will make it the perfect match to the sole, and then you can go to your grinder. For a round plane, this one, I use my triangle file, which has a flat surface. I simply follow the shape of the sole to get the perfect shape of the body. Then you go and grind it. Now in the case of the round blade, we'll just grind that on a normal flat wheel. All I do is rotate the blade on my tool rest 30 degrees. See there, and that's how you grind your blade. It's basically the same as a normal blade, except you have to rotate the blade on the tool rest to make sure your tool rest is at the correct angle, same as before. See, grinds all the way around. The hollow blades, the tool we use, which we find the most efficient to do the sharpening on these blades, is what we call a Wasp sander, which is an attachment to your drill press, which is spring loaded. We make up different size arbors to put in our chuck, and we have 3 grits of sandpaper. That's 180 grit, 400 and 1000 grit or 1200. So depending on whether you need to shape the blade, I only use the 180 grit if I have to shape a blade. For sharpening, I start with a 400 grit. Switch on drill press, and I rotate the blade around the shape of this. For smaller blades you need a smaller size, for bigger blades you use a bigger drum. These are some different size ones we have. So you just work your blade around once again until you get your wire edge. It's the same principle as sharpening a normal blade. Work that like that. Take this 400 grit off and put your 1000 grit on. This is quite worn out and it polishes the edge. It's probably akin to about a 6000 grit waterstone. I've got a nice little wire edge there. You can see it's nicely polished in the cutting area. And then from here on in, for the round blade, we just use a flat waterstone to do the bevel, and then for both of them, we just use normal waterstones to flatten the back, which we'll go and do now. Okay, once you've ground your blade, and as I said before, I want to emphasise, grinding blades is really important. If you hollow grind your blades well, then this process takes very little time. If you don't grind your blades well, this process will take a long time. Sharpening by hand using waterstones. Having a small board with wedges to hold the stones firmly into position is a good thing. It makes it a lot easier to do your work. And I just hold the board with either a tail vise or a front vise. Now with flattening your waterstones, this 10mm thick glass with 180 grit sandpaper on it, a little bit of water usually helps a little bit to cut the stone back. And once the dirty marks and that have all gone, and the glass plate tends to want to stick to the stone, it'll be nice and flat. Same again with that's the 1000 grit, and this is a thick 6000 grit stone. Make sure your stones are held tight. Starting to suck onto the glass. You can see all the dirty marks are coming off and you're getting a clean flat surface. Okay, we've got two nice clean flat surfaces now, and very importantly, that glass flat surface there makes these two a perfect match. So if I need to do the back of this blade and then I go to this stone, it's going to be a perfect match. Once upon a time I used to use a diamond stone, but the problem there was it was slightly different to the flatness that I got with my using the glass and sandpaper. So you really have to use waterstones, match them up together if you're going to do the back here and here. Once your back is flat, usually you only got to do it on your fine stone anyway. Right, so down to sharpening. Got my nice hollow grind here. I've squared my blade up. Some water on the stone. Spread it out. Make sure you've got plenty. This is the 1000 grit. Lots of water to keep the stone clean. I do it by hand. The blade can rotate between thumb and that finger there, your second finger. Weight on the front of the bevel with this finger and these two, and just work your blade backwards and forwards. And I'm just putting a little bit more pressure on the front edge than the back edge, and that cuts where we want. Where we want the cutting to happen is right at this front edge, and you can see it just rubs on the back edge and the front edge, and that's the beauty of the hollow grind. I'm not having to hone away all that metal on this big thick blade. Very quickly, because we've got a beautiful hollow grind, we start to get a wire edge. Once the wire edge is formed, that tells you you've cut the wear of the blade back to 0. Now all I have to do is finish this blade by polishing the back, and this black stuff that builds up on the stone, that's crushed stone and metal from the blade, and it clogs the pores of the stone and actually helps polish the blade up. Now we've done the back, taken the wire edge off there. Now we've got to polish this front edge, and that's why I like to be able to tilt that. So with my ring finger I pull the blade into my hand. I don't bend my wrist. Keep your wrist straight, and that'll stop it from diving into the stone. On this fine grit stone, if you hang your first finger slightly over the edge, it will help stop the blade digging in also. So I've probably only raised it 1 degree approximately. I've never ever measured it. Work it backwards and forwards, and you get a wire edge again. Once you feel that wire edge even all the way across, then you can finish that off. Just grab a rag, clean your blade up. Now that would be nice and sharp. Test for sharpness. Scraping your fingernail is not a bad one. You can shave your arm, but I'm not going to do it in the video. It's up to you how you test for sharpness, but that blade will be very sharp. I've made my blade edge square. Now if I'm using this as a smoothing plane, I'm going to relieve those corners just slightly, say 2 mil from the edge either side. Now to do that, the easiest way is to sit it flat on the stone and tilt it up just a little bit and drag it back. And do the other side. And you'll see a very slight, your blade will be flat, then it just drops off on the corners, just a little bit more. Now do the same on this stone. So these corners still need to be sharp, and then finish the back of your blade off. And then that blade, when you're using it for planing a flat surface, won't leave little tracking marks. It's probably a little bit hard to see there, but it does relieve just slightly from about 2 mils in. So that's, you know, quite often I get asked, what stones, how fine a stone should we go to? If your blade looks chrome-like and you can see your face in the blade, then it's usually a fine enough stone. And it only has to be right down to the edge. If there's a dull patch here or a low patch, it doesn't matter, but as long as you've got it shiny right down at the edge. The same goes for this sort of blade. So it's a shoulder plane blade. Work it backwards and forwards. This is quite a new blade, and you can see it's not polished, so you would have to work on the back of this on this 1000 grit stone first. The other blade was already polished, so we didn't need to do the back on the 1000 grit. But there are occasions when you do need to do the back of your blade on a 1000 grit stone. And there's a bit of work in that. I won't keep going because it's the same procedure, but you just keep working that until you get rid of all your little all the little scratches, then go through the same procedure. So that's sharpening flat blades. Skew blades are exactly the same, except you hold them at an angle. Same procedure, and have your angle checker to make sure you maintain your angle. And when you put that in your plane, you'll have to check. You may have to take a little bit off one side to correct it, but the principles are all the same. Now when it comes to hollows and rounds, the hollow you've already seen on that other drill press setup. We've done the bevel on this plane, so all we've got to do is finish the back of the blade off. There's some water on there. Work backwards and forwards till you get that real chrome-like look again. And that's that blade sharp now. For your round blade, you set it on the stone and you work it this way, following the curvature of the blade around till you get a nice even mark around the bevel. And also, when you feel the back of the blade, you should be able to feel an even wire edge. There's no wire edge on that side, means you haven't sharpened that part of the blade. So a nice even wire edge will tell you that you've gone around the whole blade, or the whole corner of the blade. Same again, do the back of your blade, and then the exact same procedure, work your blade backwards and forwards, and I'm just maintaining my 30 degrees. Wire edge again, take the wire edge off, and my blade is complete. And that will be a very sharp blade. Now, some alternatives for hollows and rounds when you're finishing, doing your finish sharpening. You can use slipstones. This is my old slipstone for sharpening carving chisels, but there are parts of this stone which suit the radius of these different hollows and rounds. So you can work them on a slipstone. Same with this side, find the one that suits that. And that's the other way of sharpening hollows and rounds. And there's a third way. If you buy a set of hollows and rounds, while the plane's in good working order, make up a piece of wood like this. Doesn't have to be this long, but cut a hollow and then a round, and all I've got to do then is lay sandpaper in these, and you can see I've put a cut down the middle so I can fold the sandpaper and put it in there and fold it over the side. And this one I just drag it back. So with sandpaper obviously, so start with about 400 grit and then get up to about 1000 or 1200. And being long, you can use different spots if you need it to be cutting quickly, so you could have your 400 grit here and your 1000 grit here. And same with for your hollow blade. So work your edge, just dragging it back. So with your 400 grit and then down this end, finish it on 1000 grit paper. And that's another way of sharpening hollows and round. Never be afraid to sharpen your hollows around, because they will perform much better with a sharp blade. And as I said before, the principle is exactly the same as sharpening a flat blade. You just have to work your curves. Got one of our dado planes, or possibly an old one as well, sharpening a dado nicker blade. For this one, we just wind it out till it releases. And there we have our dado blade. The outside has been polished perfectly and made to an exact width. You never sharpen the outside, it's done. But for the inside, what I do is I make up these just thin pieces of wood, 400 grit on one side, 1000 grit on the other side. You start by working your blade on the 400 grit. It's a curved blade, it's the same sort of principle. You curve it around, making that sharp. This is high speed steel. It holds a very good edge, so you won't have to sharpen it very often, but this is how you do it. Work that till you feel a little wire edge. Make sure the angle in there, make sure that maintains at about 30 degrees. So you might have to, if that gets less than 30, you may have to glue a bit of coarse sandpaper on here and work that bevel a bit more. Then simply finish it off on your fine grit stone, and that's how you keep those knickers in very good working order. As I say, a sharp knicker is critical for your cross grain work with a dado plane. Put it back in, fit in there, push down on there, wind your handle, wind your knob, sorry. That'll engage the thread. Just pull it back into the body of the plane and set the depth that you need. And you can feel the blade is slightly proud, so just to remember, don't touch the outside of the blade.